Today we're going to be talking about what a chiller is. We got some requests from some guys on our Facebook group about running through the fundamentals of a chiller, how they operate, what they are, where they're located, and just get a basic understanding of what the purpose of a chiller is. And at the end of the video, we're going to show some really cool job sites that we've been on over the years and kind of give you guys a little bit of an inside scoop. So stay tuned. So what is a chiller? Essentially, all a chiller is just a mechanical piece of equipment that uses physics, also known as the refrigerant cycle, to remove heat from fluid. That's essentially as simple as it is. So chillers get more and more complex the bigger they get, but the basic fundamental is you use physics to move heat from one area to another. In the case of a chiller, you typically are pulling heat out of a liquid on the evaporator side, and you're moving that heat to the condenser side, whether it's air-cooled chiller or water-cooled chiller. And we're going to kind of break down some more terminology and things like that so you guys are more familiar with what I'm talking about. In our trade, chillers are commonly classified into two groups. I like to classify them into three main groups. So I classify them into air-cooled chillers, water-cooled chillers, and absorbers. The reason why I separate out absorbers is they're kind of their own machine. They're kind of their own animal. So I like to separate that out. I'm not going to be going in too far into absorbers in this video, but if you do want to learn more about absorbers, they're really freaking interesting. So do some research. I think the Engineering Mindset has a lot of really good videos on absorbers, so dig into that if you want to learn more about absorbers. Some other ways technicians use to describe chillers that they're working on, or that say they're having a conversation with another tech, they'll describe them by the compressor type as well. Common compressor types on chillers would be a centrifugal compressor, screw compressors, scroll compressors, reciprocating compressors, etc. So if a guy was talking to somebody on the phone, he might say that he has a water-cooled centrifugal. He might say that he has an air-cooled screw chiller. And it's just kind of a way we describe what we're working on. What is a water-cooled chiller? A water-cooled chiller is a chiller that uses water on the condenser side to reject the heat. So essentially what's happening is you have a heat exchanger on the condenser side. It uses water or glycol, depending on what kind of a system you have, to pull the heat from the condenser circuit on the refrigeration system. It then sends that water either to a heat exchanger, or it'll send that water to a dry cooler, or maybe even to a cooling tower. And so that's basically all a water-cooled chiller is. What's an air-cooled chiller? Essentially, an air-cooled chiller just describes the way the heat's being rejected. So in an air-cooled chiller, the heat's being rejected directly outside. Typically, you see air-cooled chillers as packaged units. So the compressor, evaporator, and condensing unit will be packaged in one, typically outside, and then they'll just run piping from the chiller outside inside the building. Some other air-cooled chillers you'll see maybe have a remote condenser, so essentially the unit's not completely packaged, so it'll have a evaporator skid and with a compressor on it inside, and it'll be piped outside to the air-cooled condenser. But essentially that's all an air-cooled chiller is. It just uses condenser fans like any other type of refrigeration or air conditioning piece of equipment, and just rejects the heat outside that way. What is an absorber? An absorber is a completely different animal. I really like absorbers. They're freaking awesome. Essentially what an absorber is it takes heat, and through physics again, but usually through a different type of medium, it uses heat to create cold water. So essentially the process is you add steam, or sometimes they use a burner, or sometimes they even use exhaust gas from like a turbine or something like that at a power plant. And they'll take that exhaust gas and they'll heat up a solution and create a refrigeration effect with it. I'm not going to go super far in depth with absorbers because you could spend 4 videos just explaining what an absorber is, but the Engineering Mindset has really good videos on absorbers, so take notes and go check out some of his stuff. He's got really good videos on it. What are some of the industries that we use chillers in? Honestly, pretty much every single industry that you could think of has a chiller at some point throughout the process. So some common places that I've seen: oil mining, juice production, power generation, district cooling, some military ships, literally anything you can think of. Cookie factories are just a couple examples of some of the things I've seen. They're just literally everywhere. And the cool thing about chillers is it takes you all over the place. It takes you all over the world. You get to see the behind the scenes of the world that nobody else gets to see. It's just, there's nothing that I believe that's cooler than that. You get to see tons of cool equipment. You get to travel and see cool things that almost nobody gets to see in our industry. And that is chillers. So if you guys like this video, please like and subscribe.